Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, August 8th, 2023, and today we are going to be talking about the Ohio first issue, the issue number 1 that was just voted on in an August 8th election, an election put forth by the Republican state legislature in this Republican state that would determine how state constitutional amendments are passed by the Ohio public. Now, I've been covering a lot of stories dealing with the 2024 Republican nomination, the 2024 presidential race, Senate elections, governor elections. So why is this one particular issue so exceptionally important, and why am I making a video about it? Well, just moments ago, Dave Wasserman from the Cook Political Report announced that the race is over, that the pro-choice side, which is context that we will talk about in just a moment, with Ohio issue 1, has failed to pass, in which it needed just 50% plus 1 of voters to pass said amendment that would, ironically enough, change the threshold to pass a state constitutional amendment to 60%. Now, the reason why Dave Wasserman throws into the fray this pro-choice side is because Ohio issue 1 didn't come out of nowhere. Ohio issue 1 came as a result of abortion rights activists that came forth and started getting signatures ahead of the November general election that would put forth a ballot initiative that would secure abortion rights should the majority of the Ohio public vote in favor. Ohio currently serving as one of the more restrictive states in the United States with an abortion ban, with a Republican trifecta in the state legislature and in the governorship. Mike DeWine passing such an abortion ban has prompted these activists to go through Democratic means to enshrine the issue of abortion, to enshrine abortion rights in the state constitution. So what happened was the Republican Party decided to move forward with this thing called Ohio Issue 1. Essentially what they did was that they put forth an August 8th election, an off-year random date for an election that would allow voters to vote on this Issue 1 that would, ahead of the November general election, raise the threshold to 60%. This became an extremely partisan divide, with Republicans in the state legislature completely endorsing Ohio Issue 1's passage. A yes vote would have raised the threshold to 60%, going all the way up to senators in Ohio, the governor of Ohio, the lieutenant governor of Ohio, the secretary of state of Ohio. Every single Republican politician, any of them that you can name or think of, you can nearly guarantee that they endorse the passing of Ohio Issue 1. Now, what we have found this evening is that the voters resoundingly rejected that notion that you should raise the overall Democratic threshold at amending the state constitution. They voted in an overwhelming fashion against this race. Now, the race is still being counted. We have a lot of election day votes to count, but we know how this is going to go. Dave Wasserman isn't wrong, and Ohio Issue 1 just simply is not passing. We can take a look at where the Washington Post currently has the results, but with roughly a fourth of all the votes cast counted, the no vote is winning 70% to 30%, 69 to 31. However you want to split it, the no vote is winning and will very easily win this race. Now, what we have also found here is that this issue of yes versus no, while though extremely partisan in terms of influential figures, isn't as partisan as you might think when it comes down to overall electorate. What I mean by that is, if you look back at the 2020 presidential election results, we can take some individual counties as perfect examples of why we should not expect these results to be just entirely by Democrats, given that Ohio is fundamentally a red state. Cuyahoga County, which in 2020 voted for Joe Biden with 67% of the vote, gave the no vote, as of the current report, 84%. You just needed roughly what Joe Biden got with slight improvements, given that he lost the state by 8%. You needed to make that 8% margin. Not only did they do that, but they are now winning by a 40-point margin across the state. Now, as I said, we have to wait for the election day vote to come in, and I do expect it to narrow up the race significantly from 40%, but you're still on track to seeing, at least at a bare minimum, a no vote of 10 to 15% in favor of that no, in favor of failing Ohio Issue 1. Now, we talked about why the Ohio Republicans put forth this ahead of an abortion referendum, but you might be thinking, why are they doing this anyway? Ohio is a red state, so why should Republicans be worried about an abortion referendum if candidates are voting for pro-life Republicans like Donald Trump? Even in 2022, a good year for Democrats in practically every sense of the word, you can see that in the Senate race, J.D. Vance, the Republican, still defeated Tim Ryan, a swing state House Democrat, a very well-known one across the state, by roughly 5 to 6 points in this battleground state, where at the time, was a battleground, but ultimately ended up being still a Republican stronghold. The takeaway here, pro-life candidates weren't exactly exiled by their pro-life stances, even though in many other states they were. But they're worried because the issue of abortion is a lot more personal to people than voting for Democrats versus Republicans. There are plenty of pro-choice Republicans. You can see it in opinion polls. You can see it in overall, composition of electorate, and you can see it in recent abortion referendums, where maybe if Ohio Issue 1 had been implemented in states like Kentucky, in states like Kansas, you would have had a different result. Because in Kansas, we found here that voters decided to keep abortion legal in the state of Kansas. But where did it fall short? The 60%, though Kansas didn't have a law that decided that 60% was the threshold. Abortion was enshrined in the state years ago, and it was maintained in the Kansas 2022 vote, with 59% of the vote. In the Kentucky race, what we found here is that they rejected an anti-abortion ballot measure. We found that ultimately, the yes vote that enshrined the vote, 52.5% that voted no against removing the right to an abortion, explicitly stating that there is no right to an abortion in the Constitution. You found 53% said no, again, below that 60% threshold that Ohio Republicans were hoping was going to happen in their state. Now, Ohio is a lot bluer than Kentucky is, than Kansas is. We can see that in 2020, Kentucky went to Donald Trump by 26 points. Kansas went to Donald Trump by 15 points. Ohio, on the other hand, went by only 8. Now, keeping that in mind, though, I think the Ohio Republicans were really trying to do anything they could to stifle this. That's why they were scared. We say Donald Trump is pro-life because he is, but voters weren't voting for Donald Trump simply because he was pro-life. In fact, I think in the 2020 election, it wasn't as much of a deal breaker as it is today for a lot of voters, given that Roe v. Wade had been the law of the land for 50 continuous years. Now, with Kentucky, a Trump plus 26 state, voting against an anti-abortion referendum, Kansas, a Trump plus 15 state, enshrining the right to abortion by over 15 points, nearly a 35-point swing from Donald Trump to the pro-choice side, you are seeing why Ohio Republicans became very, very scared. But as I said, they threw everything behind this initiative. They made, very, very weird rules. And I say weird because I don't want to criticize the Ohio Republicans, nor do I want to applaud them, but it is a bit off-putting that supposedly in the idea of democracy, you put this in one of the least likely to turn out races, knowing exactly where your base is. In simple politics, I don't think at all there was this concern about election security, this concern about election turnout. I think the August 8th date was chosen because Republicans knew that would be their most beneficial electorate. We find that in non-presidential years, even non-midterm years especially, that voters simply do not turn out. But the most likely group of voters in the country to turn out, older voters, white voters, affluent voters, all of which demographics that Republicans consistently win where they lag behind amongst minority voters, less affluent voters, right? More highly educated voters start to see where you are veering into the edge of maybe some parts do benefit Democrats, but generally speaking, the Republicans with their supermajority, with their trifecta, chose August 8th for a reason. And they threw everything behind this race. Vice President Mike Pence came out for the yes for issue 1. Senator J.D. Vance, who was recently elected, I just showed you his election result, came out with a yes for this vote. Mike DeWine, the incumbent governor of Ohio, came out with a yes. The auditor of Ohio, the lieutenant governor of Ohio, the secretary of state of Ohio, the treasurer of Ohio, the attorney general of Ohio, U.S. representatives, presidents of the Ohio Senate, majority leaders of the Ohio Senate, numerous state representatives. On the no side, you didn't have the most influential people. You had Senator Sherrod Brown and then a lot of former people, notably though, a bunch of Republicans. And that's where you started to see this divide, where there were some Republicans, notably John Kasich, notably Bob Taft, former governors of the state, former attorney generals that felt, you know what, even if abortion rights are at stake, this is the wrong way to go about it. You are hindering the democratic process. And that's what ultimately ended up winning. Polling showed a much closer race than what it actually was, and we can see right now that the voters are voting against this decision. Voters are going against issue 1. in numerous Trump counties, because Biden didn't win that many. You can see here he won here in Montgomery County. Let's compare, right? Just picking it up out of nowhere. Huge population here, 300,000 votes roughly in the 2020 election. Joe Biden, 50%, Donald Trump, 48%. Let's check on it right now. Let's see. Well, same county here, no, 80%. Yes, 21%, or 21 to 79. 21 to 79, right? That's crazy to think about. Hamilton County, 57 for Biden, 41 for Trump. Where is it now? Well, we can see that it is 80% no, 20% yes. Again, election day vote to come in. As the votes have been cast, we have started to see an uptick in the yes share. But even then, this is a resounding defeat. When the votes are counted, when the votes are fully cast and overall tallied together, we should expect the no vote to prevail by double digits. It is a resounding defeat for a state that otherwise votes conservative on practically every single level. House, Senate, governor, president. This is a red state, and it is a continuation of a trend that we saw in 2022, that we are seeing emerge for the 2024 election, that on the issue of abortion, Republicans still lose. We have not seen any substantial change in sentiment around abortion in their favor at all this election cycle. In 2022, when the leak came out about Roe v. Wade, we did not see a change or uptick in pro-life sentiment across this country. In fact, we saw the opposite. We saw people turn out at record-breaking numbers in what was supposed to be a red wave and handed Democrats an additional seat in the Senate, nearly maintained Democrats in the House, and flipped governorships from red to blue, notably Arizona, a state where this abortion ban would have made all the difference. And now Democrats have nearly flipped state houses in Arizona. They flipped the state house in Michigan, won the trifecta for the first time in 40 years, alongside the same ballot initiative that enshrined abortion rights by double digits in the 2022 midterms. If it couldn't be clearer than it is right now, abortion is a losing issue for Republicans, and Democrats are still voting. Voters still care. Voters are still turning out, even when you throw them in an off year 2023 August 8th election, an election that nobody knew was coming around the corner. You found that the resounding defeat is a testament to one main thing: that Republicans are on the wrong side of this social issue and continue to be so. And it is the hill that for some reason they want to die on, that they will die on for the 2024 election. And maybe that's when they'll learn. But in the meantime, Democrats are going to take advantage about this. We're going to be talking about this in another video tomorrow, where we explore a new memo that was leaked by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. These are the House Democrats. And the reason why it's important that we talk about this is because what they have found is that they have a strategy to win back House control in 2024. And based off their 2022 strategy, based off the results we are seeing in Ohio today, it's a strategy that's going to work. We have found that so many of these counties are being completely against the way that issue 1 is expected to go down. And it's also bad news that many of the Republicans that are looking to challenge Senator Sherrod Brown, the Democrat in Ohio, the one person who can actually win as a Democrat in Ohio, because I don't think Joe Biden's going to do it, but I do believe that Sherrod Brown has a fighting chance. Ohio as a state still is competitive for him. And the Republicans that are running against him, notably the Secretary of State Frank LaRose, who has aligned himself very heavily with trying to pass issue 1, is in this very difficult position, because we have found since then that these voters are going to reward the no side, and thus they will likely reward those who were alongside with them. The place that Frank LaRose is in right now is not conducive to a resounding victory over Senator Sherrod Brown, who has a strong electoral presence in the state. I don't deny that Ohio is a red state, but that's why it makes Ohio issue 1's failure all that more impressive for the pro-life side. Dave Wasserman is correct. This is a major victory. Ohio should have been a state Republicans could rely on constitutional amendments, could rely on special elections, could rely on general elections. And while they may be able to rely on a Donald Trump victory in Ohio in 2024 in the general election, they can't guarantee that issues like abortion won't be solidified in the other direction in this state, that Senate races that would have been competitive are now even more competitive in favor of the Democratic Party. In places where Ohio voters see this as a mainstream issue as well, you will find a decrease in support for the candidates that backed such an unpopular issue. It shows how out of touch, it shows how disingenuous some of these politicians are. And I don't say that again to criticize them, but this is perception. In American politics, public perception is everything and can make or break a campaign. And right now, I would certainly not want to be Frank LaRose or any other mainstream Republican that came out in favor of Issue 1 ahead of such a tumultuous year and potentially a solidified abortion rights following the November referendum election. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen is a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.